Okay, so I have pulled out that dash, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to separate the power cable here. This is to the fan select speed right there, and then I'm going to have to separate up here the connector to the clock. What I also found out was down here is I also needed to pop the wires out of these connectors here. And there's also one here. Pop those out, pop those out. Remember that little wire circle was there and the cable came through here, and I had to just pop those out. So here's the dash. I've got this pulled out. I did disconnect the connector for the clock, which connected right here. And then here's the power cords for the hazards and the rear defrost. And there's that power cord for the heat select, or for the fan motor, I'm sorry. I am not going to have to disconnect those. There's enough space here where I can get to the radio. There's 4 screws here, this right here, and then there's 2 right there. So we got access to the radio. Okay, so I took out those 4 screws and the radio pulled right out. And then here's the connection in the back, the power supply and speaker wires for the back of the radio. And so to disconnect that, they are tabs I'm going to push down that will release, and then I'm going to pull that power pack right out of the back. Okay, so here's the radio. I disconnected that power pack. There was one tab right here. I just pushed down, and then pulled that unit out. And then there was the antenna connection here. I just pulled straight out. And there's the antenna, and there's the power pack and speaker connections. Next, I'm going to install my Pioneer low budget CD player with aux front input. Okay, so here's the radio I'm going to put in. This Pioneer DEH 1300 MP. Very low budget. Just bought it for $54 at Best Buy. And then here is a wire harness for a 2005 Hyundai Accent. Got this at AutoZone. And next I'll install this. Okay, so here's the wire harness from AutoZone. I just plugged it into the unit from the car, and it just snapped into place. And there's all the open wire ends here. And next I'm going to take the stereo and put this in and see if this fits. So next I'm going to take off these mounting brackets on the factory radio and use those on my stock or the aftermarket Pioneer radio to install it. Okay, so I took those side mounting brackets off the stock radio and put those on my Pioneer radio, and I'm going to use that to install into the dash here. Okay, so this is the next step. This is the wiring harness that came with the stereo. So I'm going to connect up the corresponding colors with the harness that I got from AutoZone there, and connect that up, and then plug that into the back of the Pioneer radio, and then put that in. What's important here is that there's this grounding wire, this black wire that we see right here, and what I'm going to do is find a metal connection here and screw it in there. There's some holes up here, so I'm going to put a bolt, one of the screws that came with the car stereo, put that in and connect the grounding wire there, and that's part of the metal chassis That's very important for connection of the stereo. Alright, so once all these wires are connected up and plugged into the stereo, then I'm going to place that back in, screw it into these holes here, and then put the trim on the radio, and then put the dash back on. I'll show you how that fits. Okay, so I've connected the wiring harness that's from AutoZone to the little power harness from the aftermarket stereo, and I've connected them up by color, by front, left, and left rear, and right front and right rear. Then I have the red for the on position on your ignition so the stereo will work, and then I've got the yellow power, and then I've got the black grounding wire, which I'm going to connect in here to the metal part of the car. Alright, so I'm going to connect those up and then install the stereo. Okay, so harness is in place, all connected wires are there. To make life easier, I just connected the ground wire from the aftermarket stereo connection to the ground wire that was present on the harness from that I purchased from AutoZone. And there you go. So now I'm going to plug in the stereo, install it, and put everything back. Okay, so the car stereo is screwed in, and I also put the trim plate that came with it on it, and now I'm going to connect the light power, or the clock power supply there to the clock, and then push everything into place, snap it in, and put those two screws down in the cup holder areas, and then connect up the wires for the controls up to what I showed you previously of how to disconnect. I'll connect those back up, and then we'll connect the negative terminal on the battery and see if this thing fires up. So I have the center dash back into place. There's the stereo. My trim piece that came with the stereo was a little too thick, which prevented the dash from fitting perfectly, so I've got to order one of those off Amazon. They run for about $3 to $8. Just a little trim piece that actually matches the center console piece, and that'll look really nice. So I'm going to have to take that off again when that gets here and just throw that on really quickly. But just to show you, I went underneath here, and it's important that you keep these knobs in the furthest left position, so all the way cold. The vent select to the furthest to the left. And I went under here and connected those wires up, those loops to those knobs, and plugged it into those connectors right there. So that red one went on the bottom, the black one went on the top. Okay. So I'm just going to show you what they do. So I'm going to turn the vent select, and that's what that does right there. Alright, and then here's the hot and cold. Alright, so here's the finished product. Got that plate back on underneath the driver's side. And then here's the inside. Got the center console all snapped back into place. There's the new radio, and it works great. And all the control knobs work. And there's the glove box back into place over there. So that's it. Installing a stereo on the 2005 Hyundai Accent.